The government here considering its next move after the Speaker of the House of Commons said a convention dating back to 1604 means the Prime Minister cannot ask Parliament to vote again on her proposal for Britain's divorce from the EU. Brexit is due to happen next week, and a vote had been expected imminently. There are signs of frustration elsewhere.
It's not just a game, it's an extremely serious situation.
Germany's Europe Minister Michael Ross. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
And Facebook says none of the 200 or so people who watched video of the New Zealand mosque shooting flagged it to moderators. That underlines the challenge tech companies face in policing violent or disturbing content in real time. Facebook says the gunman's live 17-minute broadcast was viewed fewer than 200 times, and the first user report did not come in until 12 minutes after it ended. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
There's a particular reason why there is a Back to God radio show. It was about 4 years ago, God called me out of the pulpit and said, Dexter, I need you to go tell my people it's time for them to get back to God, back to my morals, back to my values. This is the thing that you're supposed to do simply because you belong to the Most High God. It's the least that you could do for a God that loves you the way that he does.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I don't like for people to go to prison when it's not absolutely necessary, but sometimes there ought to be an example. There needs to be a real clear accountability for things that have robbed other kids of the opportunity to go to college. And I think some of these people will get frog marched across the federal courthouse lawn.
This is part of the continuing Russia investigation. We're not going to just let all these fake news stories that were written about this investigation, about this hoax, that were lies. We're going to challenge every single one of them in court. We're just starting with Twitter.
This is the most ridiculous display by the Democrats. They are very well aware that the Mueller report is probably going to be released soon, and it is going to show that the president did nothing wrong, the campaign did nothing wrong, as we have all said from the very beginning. So here they have to throw something else out there to distract people, to try and make the president look bad.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yeah. And now, Stacy Washington. I'm here again. No shock there. Welcome to the program here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. I'm so excited to be with you. We have a jam-packed program today. We are going to spend this whole first hour, just me and you. No guest, unless you consider yourself a guest, and if so, you are an esteemed member and part of this program. Thank you for being here. You can find out more at afr.net, urbanfamilytalk.com. That's where you can sign up for the conference that's coming up in the summer. I believe it's the last week in June, and we're going to be so excited to have you there with us to be able to celebrate marriage, life, family, all from the biblical perspective. A lot of amazing speakers, and I hope to learn a lot while I'm there and to spend a lot of time just interfacing with the good people who will be attending the conference as well. You can register at Urban Family Talk. You can find out more at urbanfamilytalk.com. So today on the program, like I said, we don't have a guest this hour. We're going to be talking to you. And part of what we're going to be discussing starting next segment is we're going to kind of unpack this persistent lie. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like when you see people, a couple of teenagers in high school, one doesn't like the other, so they tell a falsehood about that person. And then the echo chamber, the friend group of the original person, the liar, takes that falsehood and they amplify it and they tell everyone they can tell. And whenever they're refuted, they don't mind because they've told enough people the lie that the lie is the truth. And the truth is something that gets buried and ignored because it doesn't fit in with this new narrative about the other person. We're seeing that on an exponentially larger and more dramatic and grand scale with the lie that President Trump is a racist and that he has validated racists through his comments after the horrible killing where the girl was run down by a white supremacist at the Charlottesville rally, which, if you remember, the original reason they were getting together to protest was because they didn't want World War II Civil War era monuments, statues, things like that torn down. They felt it was a part of the history of their area, and they didn't want them torn down. And President Trump said there are good people on both sides of that argument. He meant people who wanted the statue torn down. There were some good people who wanted the statues torn down. There were also some good people who wanted the statues to stay up. That's what he meant. He didn't mean there were white supremacists on one side and white supremacists on the other side, and there were good people on both sides. He didn't mean there were protesters, counter-protesters who were against racism, and then there were the people who were purveyors of racism, the white supremacists, and that there were good people on both sides of that. At no point has the president ever called white supremacists good people. Now, this has been debunked in Ann Coulter's book, the most recent book she has out there. She talked about it here on the show. There are so many other people. The guy who writes the Dilbert cartoon, Scott Adams, he's debunked it in one of his viral Periscope videos. And the information is pretty simple and it's easy to find. But no worry, you don't have to do any homework. If I'm going to talk about a subject on the show, I'm going to bring you the homework. I did the homework. I found a couple of the clips where the president has denounced not just white supremacy, but the KKK and David Duke. Notice David Duke will come out. He's like a mole that pops out at the most inopportune time. And he'll say something nice about someone that's saying something that he agrees with as if to give them his white supremacist endorsement. And you're never to be fooled by that, right? Adults know that this guy, first of all, he's an epic master troll. He's also a white supremacist. He's also someone who loves to bask in the fact that people are angry at each other because he said something nice about somebody. He loves provoking people. He's like Worm Tongue, only worse because Worm Tongue's there all the time pouring on the horrible things. And it's a constant hum of lies. With him, he just pops out whenever it makes sense to him. And then he goes back and he's living his life and enjoying himself. He's actually, living his best life, enjoying himself, YOLO, all the other little things, treat yourself, whatever your slogan is. He's doing all that. But when he sees an opportunity to come out and make other people look bad or fight just by saying his name, he does it. And we give in to that by giving David Duke the power to make us say, oh, David Duke likes that person, so we don't like that person anymore. It's like we have to one-up each other on how unracist we are. And, I refuse to play that game. I'm done trying to appease people who want me to bow down to their ideology. And the way they get me to bow down is to say, well, that wasn't racist or that is racist. If something is racist, you are a grown adult. You should be able to decipher that for yourself. And if something is not racist or racially motivated, same. The other thing is the New Zealand attack, as horrific as it was, is not an invitation for Americans to prostrate themselves in front of the practitioners of Islam as if we did something wrong. Nothing we said or did here in this country was the impetus for that man creating that attack. He thought the attack up in his own mind. He engaged in the sinful, lustful behavior of planning to kill people at mosques. Then he went out and executed it and live streamed it to Facebook. That has nothing to do with Americans or what we believe or our country or the level of racism here or anything else like that. I mean, if that's the case, any person who wants to blame America for anything can just add into their manifesto and also America made me do this. And then we're on the hook for that too. Is that all it takes? I don't think so. Free thinking individuals know that has nothing to do with who, as Barack Obama would say, you guys know I hate this slogan, but I'm going to say it anyway. It has nothing to do with who we are. There's our Obama reference for the day. So we're going to be getting into that. I want to invite you. Share-a-thon's coming up. I've been talking about it with some fantastic things in store for you during the week of Share-a-thon. But right now is the time where we normally ask you to tell us what the ministry means to you. So bear with me here. I need to give you this number so you can call in and tell us about how much you like us and how much we rock. Okay? Okay, I'm kidding. We want you to call in and tell us a listener story about how the programming here at AFR has impacted you. And sometimes y'all share this when you call up and you're calling in on the program, and that's wonderful. We just want you to call and leave that message on this line at 877-876-8893, 877-876-8893. And you can share for a minute or two, and then you might get to hear yourself during Share-a-thon, which is always awesome. I don't know about you, but I love it when I'm just strolling on down the road, minding my own business, and then I hear a promo, and it's me. Okay, I just told you a secret. So the first time that ever happened to me, just since we're on the subject, years and years ago, when I was just doing like a 7 to 15 minute radio hit on a morning show here locally, and this is where I got my start on radio, he would do a promo for who was on the next day. And so that was basically the only channel I listened to back then. And I'd be driving down the street, just minding my own business, listening. And he would come on and say, tomorrow on, Almond in the Morning, we're going to have, and he'd name off the people, and he'd say, and Stacy on the right, or we're going to have Stacy on the right, yada, yada, yada. And I would be like, woohoo, So the first time I ever said to him, oh, you shouted me out on the radio, he was like, that's called a promo. I do those every day. And let the wind out of my sails. But I still get a little kick out of hearing that type of thing, which means you can get a kick out of hearing it too, but you have to do something in order to get your voice on the radio, and that is call 877-876-8893. 877-876-8893. Okay, so let's do our encouragement. The encouragement for today is Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge. God is our refuge. And I love this scripture. We could just sit here all day. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. It doesn't say if you're perfect. He's your present help in time of trouble. If you've, prayed every single morning in a row and not missed any of your morning devotionals, or if you haven't had an angry outburst, you haven't lost your temper, or you haven't had that same awful thought you've been trying to get rid of about the person who's been, backstabbing you or whatever the situation is. He doesn't put any ifs, ands, or buts on this. He doesn't say, I might be your help if you've satisfied these requirements. Believe in Jesus. He's your ever-present help. That's it. And this is something that stands in the middle of the day and the middle of the night, the morning, the noontime, when you're getting that phone call that you never wanted to get, when you have a family member who's sick, when you have the best, highest moments of your life and you're just floating on cloud nine. He's your ever-present help in time of trouble. He's your refuge and strength. That's God. And that's encouraging. So now I want to talk about something that is not encouraging, and it's the media silence surrounding the Muslim massacre of Christians. And so obviously we don't condone any massacres at all. Let me make my little informative PSA here real quick. Because what will happen is someone will say, well, she's talking about Christians who've been massacred as if it's okay for Muslims to be massacred. But is that okay? You're right. It's not okay, whiny baby. It's not okay for anyone to be massacred. I'm never okay with people getting massacred, okay? But what should happen is the same kind of media furor that has occurred around the massacre of the Muslims who were practicing and worshiping at their mosques in the Netherlands or New Zealand. That is horrifying. It should be a news story. And so should this. Political leaders, public figures falling over themselves this weekend to condemn the mosque attacks in New Zealand. But dozens of Christians were slaughtered by Muslims in Nigeria, and we heard nothing. Now, is it because the Nigerians have the permanent tan? I don't know. Is it because the Nigerian Christians are Christians, and that's just, not okay? I don't know. I don't know what is making it so that there's this echo chamber surrounding any kind of Christian persecution. And basically, it's not an echo chamber, it's a silo, and no sound can escape it. But then if anything happens to, at a Muslim mosque or anything like that, then, we all have to stop what we're doing and make a declaration that we're not racist and that racism is wrong. And also Islamophobia is wrong. And, Trump's Muslim ban is wrong, which, by the way, it wasn't a Muslim ban. And by the way, it was totally on point. That's why the Supreme Court validated it. And that's why it stood. And they're not connected. Saying that people who are trying to get here from countries that don't have proper vetting processes, which allows terrorist infiltration, saying that we're not going to receive people from there until they stand up their agencies and get their stuff together is not the same as saying we don't want Muslims here. We're still having lawful immigration from all over the world. Just those 6 nations were given a moratorium, not a ban, a pause. But again, I guess the truth doesn't really matter, does it? So we've got these Christians, and they're in Nigeria, and it's a really interesting thing that's going on here, because this is not our reality. We have a functioning government. As ridiculous as our Congress is, we have a functioning government. And, this is just not what we know here in this country. So this is about Fulani jihadists, and they just killed 120 Christian people. Let me really be clear here and delineate. We're talking about human beings who are from the country, nation state of Nigeria. They're Christians, and they were killed not because they're black, not because they're Nigerian, but because they're Christians. The Fulani jihadists are practitioners of Islam. And they killed these men, women, and children by burning down 140 houses and killing them, hacking them to death with machetes, and shooting them. The New York Times didn't report it. The Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, Detroit Free Press, LA Times, not one newspaper in the United States reported it. You got Breitbart reporting this story. Breitbart News. The three major television channels, their news shows, didn't report on it, nor did CNN or MSNBC. And this is a searing indictment on how little they think of people who practice Christianity, especially when everything's about race. You would think that since these people are Nigerian and they sport the permanent tan, that they would get their information, their news would make news because of that. But they're Christians, so no go. So when we get back, we're going to talk about President Trump being a racist no matter what. And I have audio for you. Stay right there.
"80% of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, I mean, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love could save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I have a lot of friends, but I'm especially thankful for a handful of close friends who ask me hard questions. When we see each other, we look each other straight in the eye and ask, "Are you clean?" Now, I know that sounds kind of like a hard, direct question, but we know each other and we love each other. We do this out of love and a sincere desire to encourage each other to finish well. We all need to be reminded to remain faithful. We need people in our lives who say, "How are you doing? Are you hanging in there? Are you staying faithful to your wife? Are you keeping your priorities? Are you using money wisely? What about your time?" We all need those people who help us lovingly keep going in the right direction. Great men and women of God have fallen. We must never forget the fact that we're vulnerable. In Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 and 15, it's Joshua's final message to the nation of Israel, where he's kind of preaching his own eulogy. Listen to what he says. "Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods in which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. And if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Well, here's what I want you to remember today. If we're going to endure until the end, it will take a determined heart to please God, no matter what.
Crawford Loritz is Senior Pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org. Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The president is supposed to be, and he is, the most powerful person in the world. And therefore, he has the biggest megaphone in the world, and he uses it for other reasons. But on this, and anytime we're talking about white supremacy or white nationalism, he chooses not to use it. And the language that he uses continually. I mean, even when he talked about the horrific incident that took place in New Zealand, he came back and was talking about invaders, which is the same kind of language that you see white nationalists and white supremacists use on a consistent basis. And then you add that on the kind of rhetoric and things that the president has said, whether it's during the campaign or even before the campaign started, you know, whether it was about Barack Obama and his status. Those were languages and words, code words, that leads and builds one upon the other.
Really? So things that the president has said are building and leading one upon the other. It sounds like somebody who got smacked just a little bit too hard, and instead of acknowledging that they deserved the smack, yay, they even provoked it. They stood up there and they put their face up and they said, we're going to say all kinds of horrible things about you, and we dare you to say anything back to defend yourself. And Donald Trump was like, I'll take that dare every day. And he's been smacking them so hard their ears are still ringing from the smacks from the campaign. They can't even hear the stuff he's saying right now about them. They're too busy worrying about how hard he smacked them back then. And so he gets up here. His name's Representative Gregory Meeks, and he fixes his mouth to try to yet again smear Donald Trump as not just a racist, but the most powerful man on the planet. You know, I really hate it when people say that the president is the most powerful man on the planet. Now, I get in some contexts that it may appear that the president of the United States is the most powerful man on the planet because the United States exerts extreme command and authority over a very strong military, and our foreign policy aims tend to direct other nations' actions. But to say that President Trump is so powerful that he's literally causing white supremacists to rise up and shoot up mosques, well, for one, I don't think President Trump has that kind of power. I think people are responsible for their own actions. And the same as I thought it was unfortunate that President Obama said certain things about the police acting stupidly and all this other stuff, I never for 1 second thought he's empowering this one and that one to say this or that or to do this or that. Because in the end, the guy who did the mosque shootings in New Zealand had to decide for himself he was going to do those things. As much as the victimhood purveyors want to convince you that there's some magical white guy in the sky, notice it's never a magical black guy, even though we had a black president. And even though Oprah's swanning around amongst us, you know, breathing the same air as we're breathing and, you know, looking at the same trees and flying on the same planes, even though she's around too and she's black, it's just a magical white guy someplace pulling all the strings, telling people what to do, and they can't control themselves. This guy in New Zealand, his mind couldn't face up to the strength and magnificent, awe-inspiring, you know, mind control mechanism of Donald Trump. He just heard 2 or 3 comments from Donald Trump and he was done. He just had to write a crazy, whacked up manifesto and go shoot up a couple of mosques. That's what we're supposed to believe? I'm sorry, I don't believe that. And if you read the manifesto from beginning to end, you know that's not true. But for people who are getting their drive-by news and just picking up a bit here and a bit there, they hear Representative Gregory Meeks, and admittedly, he is hard to listen to. That's why I cut it off right there. He said some more slanderous lies, but I figured you'd heard enough. And they're going to hear him say that and think, oh, because President Trump did say there were good people on both sides. So here's President Trump condemning white supremacy. And I got 2 instances for you. Not because there weren't more. Not because I couldn't have spent this whole hour and part of the next just giving you different sound bites of the president over the years before he was president, since he's been president, since he was on the campaign trail, denouncing white supremacy and white supremacists and saying good things about black people, Hispanic people, Jewish people, you name it. We don't need that much documentation. You just need to hear it a couple of times from the past 12 months, one of these, and the other one is from 2 years ago. And the reason we're listening to them is because you just heard Gregory Meeks say Trump has the biggest megaphone in the world, but chooses not to condemn white supremacy. Now, that statement makes it sound as if he has never condemned white supremacy. And I would like to know from Representative Meeks, how many times does the president have to condemn it? How many times does he have to say racism is repugnant, which he said, it's wrong, it's criminal, we'll chase down and hunt down anyone who harms other people because of race. We will execute the fullest extent of the law in prosecuting them. And also, I condemn white supremacy, the KKK, and David Duke. How many more times does he have to say it? Now, you know the answer is he can never say it enough because this is a slander campaign. But let's listen to the president. It's number 3.
To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws.
We all live under the same laws. The hatred and bigotry has no place here. You hear it from his own mouth. It's not audio that I spliced together. It's this president responding to what he's heard. And I want to make another point here. And I know I'm going to be dealing in logic, so liberals won't be able to hear this. People who worship at the altar of Barack Obama won't be able to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. And anybody who thinks that President Trump is an evil, evil puppet of the Russians and also a racist, not a racist, a racist, will not be able to understand what I'm saying. But I'm going to say it anyway, because there's somebody out there who needs to hear this truth. And that is, what about Israel? If President Trump really said there were good people on both sides of the white supremacists, so in other words, there were white supremacists who were good, why wouldn't Bibi Netanyahu have immediately come out? Because you know he's prone to flying over here. Bibi Netanyahu is prone to flying over here and demanding a meeting with the U.S. Congress. And a few years ago, he did that. Something was going on with Barack Obama. They had a big kind of, going back and forth. I don't even remember what the specific issue was, but Bibi Netanyahu flew over here and requested a meeting with the entire Congress, and everyone sat down and listened to him address the U.S. Congress. Y'all remember that? Google it. Use your Bing search engine, not your Google. Use your Bing. So it's something that he will do. If he thought President Trump said that white supremacists were good, because remember, white supremacists, they don't just hate blacks. They hate all people of color. And they especially hate Jewish people. And so if anybody in Israel, but specifically Bibi Netanyahu, thought that President Trump had given a validation to white supremacists, he would have been over here for a meeting with the president. He probably would have tried to address a joint session of Congress again. You also have to think about how many millions, tens of millions of people in America voted for Donald Trump. I'm talking about that white person who your tire was flat and they pulled over and they helped you out. They didn't ask for any money. They just helped you swap your tire out and then got back in their truck and drove off. I'm talking about that white police officer when you dialed 911. Ding, ding, ding. That's me over here. And they were at your house in a minute and 20 seconds. And then they went and swept your whole yard and even went through the whole house, even though you hadn't left the house, and then stood there and basically walked you back down off the top of the tree because you're scared out of your wits. You think someone's trying to break in. They've cleared your yard, cleared your home, and now they're giving you their business cards and saying, if you feel scared later, you can call us again because we'll definitely drive around the streets, all the streets around your home to make sure your neighborhood is safe. That white guy. And I could go on and on and on. I could do 24 hours a day with 3 breaks per hour of instances of white people coming to the aid of blacks, Hispanics, Jews, Asians, whatever. All over this country, stories of white people saving the lives of black people, rescuing black kids when they're drowning in lakes, you name it. All those people, some of whom voted for Donald Trump, they're all racist too. They heard him say, this guy, these white supremacists are good people too. And they said, oh yeah, Donald Trump, you're right. White supremacists are good people too. You know good and darn well that Americans, if there's one thing they're not afraid to do, it's when someone they've supported politically says something they don't like, for them to go after them. And Americans, if President Trump said white supremacists were good people too, there are millions of Americans who would have been like, okay, so we're done. Explain yourself or we're done. I won't vote for you. I'm not voting for that. maybe the reason why liberals don't understand that that's what conservatives would do is because liberals won't do that. Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite who wants to wipe Jewish people off the face of the earth, and she wants American Jews to sit down quietly with their hands folded while she tries to get it done. And Democrats are just sitting around saying, well, she just doesn't understand the things she's saying. You don't hear any equivocation on the part of conservatives. We know what he meant. He meant on the protesters who some were for the statues and some were against. Those groups had good people on both sides, not the white supremacists who showed up and tried to hijack the protest. So how many more times does he have to say he doesn't agree with David Duke and the KKK and white supremacy? How many more times does he have to say his daughter converted to Judaism and she's a practicing Jew? Their grandchildren are Jews. The other grandchildren are Jews as well. And the wives are Jewish. All the daughters-in-law are Jewish. How much more does he need to do? So here he is. This audio is a little older. He's on a major news, kind of news magazine show. He gets asked about Paul Ryan making comments, and the comments that Paul Ryan was making they were about, the president has a lot of rhetoric that he makes that he doesn't like, and there's even some rhetoric that he's making. This was when the president was talking about not bringing a lot of people from lands that don't have compatibility with our culture. So lowering immigration from countries that send people over here who can't assimilate. And some of those countries are Muslim. Some of them are Hispanics who come over here. They don't want to speak English. They don't want to learn how to be Americans. They don't want to assimilate. They just want to come and recreate the conditions from their own country. The president was talking about that on the campaign trail, and everyone was trying to draw a line between that and racism. They were trying to say he's saying those things because he's a racist, when in reality, he was just stating the facts. And this same concept applies to when, like, let's say you're going to work for a company and you've been working for a competitor, and you come in and you keep doing things the way you did them at the competitor, but at the new company you're working for, they have their own methodology. So they put you through training and they expect you to start doing things their way, but you just won't. How long do you think you're going to last? See, the difference is at a company, they can just fire you. But once we allow you to bring your carcass over here to America and you start acting like a jihadist from your own homeland, we can't, it's not easy to get rid of you. You actually have to break the law, be convicted of a felony, and then we can deport you. So until you've actually been convicted of something, you just keep running around, spreading your garbage here in America. And that's what he's talking about. He said they weren't sending their best people. They're not. So here he is, rejecting the KKK, rejecting David Duke, and rejecting everything that has anything to do with them. It's number 4.
How many times do I have to reject? I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. From the time I'm 5 years old, I rejected them. I put it on Twitter last week. How many times? It's an amazing thing with Twitter. I have 6 million, more than 6 million, and I have another 6 million with Facebook. I have like 13 or almost 14 million with Instagram. When I put out a minor message, everybody picks it up. Donald Trump just tweeted something very unimportant. Let me just explain. When I put out that I reject the KKK and David Duke, nobody picks it up. You know why they're not? Because they don't want to pick it up. They pick it up. You pick it up. Everyone else picks it up. You saw simultaneously, practically at the same time. They don't want to pick it up. Now, I have been asked this question so many times. I have rejected it so many times.
So many times. So many times. So the point to them saying it over and over again is because some people who honestly don't have the same brain synapses firing at the same frequency and level as our Maltese, who, and I'm not trying to insult him because he's pretty smart. He's a smart little dog, but everyone knows that the bigger dogs, like the Labradors and whatnot, are smarter than the teeny tiny ones. But the teeny tiny ones can still be pretty whip smart. And our little dog, who, as smart as he is, he's never going to talk or anything, is smarter than a lot of the people that I see constantly calling the president a racist, because they don't need to let their brain synapses fire. They literally can just sit and their minds are like a trash can. You just pop the lid and you pour all the garbage into it. Donald Trump's a racist. He's somebody who, believes he does whatever Putin tells him to do. Donald Trump hates Muslims. He hates black people. Donald Trump is a hater. He's also trying to destroy this country. And they just pour that garbage in, and then you click the lid shut, and then that person will say, Donald Trump's a racist and he hates black Americans. They'll just repair it, whatever they heard. They could be at the airport and CNN's playing and they hear it and they're like, oh, that's, yeah, I heard, because we all know he's a racist. And if you ask them, you say, hey, oh, wait, what has he done that's racist? Because he's currently working on an initiative to improve, X, Y, and Z for the black community. He specifically called out the black community and said he wants to see an improvement in this area, or lowest black unemployment, for 3 decades. What's racist about that? Well, I know he's a racist. They just go back to whatever little loop is playing in their brain. And so for people like that, they don't need evidence. Even hearing the president in his own voice rejecting the KKK and David Duke, condemning white supremacy, and promising to hunt down and prosecute anyone who practices these evils is still not enough. Because the little conversational loop, the mental loop has been programmed and engaged, and they're not willing to allow any new information in to shut it off. But, we have to send the truth out, right? We have to send the truth out here right now. And that's what we're doing. And we'll continue to do that. And so when we get back, we're going to take your calls at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. And we have the study about minimum wage. It says it will increase crime if we increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I don't know about that, but we'll talk about that when we get back as well. Don't go anywhere.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Today's speedy quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Russell Wilson owe a debt of gratitude to Hall of Famer Fran Tarkenton. When Tarkenton joined the league in 1961, he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. The team was brand new, and the offensive line charged with protecting Tarkenton was weak. But Fran sprinted around the backfield, buying time, avoiding sacks, and even running the ball, developing the notion of the mobile quarterback in the process. By the time he retired 17 seasons later, he held every major passing record. He's still among the top quarterbacks of all time in both passing and rushing. Fran Tarkenton had the uncommon ability to elevate players around him, and he changed the face of football forever.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacy Washington. Turn on the news any time of day and stories of victimization flow. Every demographic group, every segment of society is a victim. Instead of seeing ourselves as righteous and forgiven, made right with God through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we believe the noise and accept a victim's mentality. Victims cannot accomplish goals or persevere through life's trials and tribulations. The New Testament is replete with verses about who we are in Christ. Guess what? You are not a victim. You are a victorious child of God. You are a branch of the true vine and a conduit of Christ's life. Jesus calls you friend. You are justified and redeemed. You are free from condemnation and set free from the law of sin and death. You are God's workmanship, created to produce good works. You are accepted, redeemed, and you can do all things through Christ, who is our strength. I'm Stacy Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Securing America.
Could North Korea end talks with the United States? Pyongyang's deputy foreign minister has threatened North Korea may walk away after the summit in Hanoi. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he remains hopeful the talks will continue.
Saw the remarks that she made. She left open the possibility that negotiations would continue for sure. It's the administration's desire that we continue to have conversations around this.
Secretary Pompeo also says he expects leader Kim Jong-un to live up to promises made in Singapore and in Hanoi.
He spoke directly to the president and made a commitment that he would not resume nuclear testing, nor would he resume missile testing.
As for North Korean accusations that Pompeo created an environment of hostility in Hanoi,
they're wrong about that. And I was there.
Talks last month in Vietnam ended suddenly without reaching a deal. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws.
So I'm not sure how he could be any more clear, and we're playing that again for emphasis. If you're just tuning into the show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here and making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. You can find out more about our ministry at afa.net. afr.net is for the radio side, and stacyontheright.com is for my website. Urban Family Talk, also a part of American Family Radio, urbanfamilytalk.com. I'd love to chat with you. This segment of the show, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. That's how you can join in. I'm so excited that next week is National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and we'll be broadcasting live from there. And so you're going to hear some wonderful guests from the convention. And really, honestly, there's going to be some super fun people there. Sam Sorbo, Kevin Sorbo, the Sorbos will be there, and others who I just really enjoy listening to them. And you hear them here on American Family Radio, the nationally syndicated people who've been around for a while and doing their ministries really established. They'll be there. I expect to probably see Star Parker and even Dr. Carol Swain, who I saw both of them at CPAC, so it'll be nice to see them again as well. So I'm really excited to get a chance to go with American Family Radio, and I'm also excited about, we broadcast from other places before. It's not like we've never done that, but it's always fun to get to do. So that's next week. This is an interesting story, and I kind of teased it a little bit last segment about this $15 minimum wage. They're saying an analysis rejects Obama's CEA claim that higher minimum wages lower crime. And this is a new paper that was released on Monday, which directly contradicts past arguments from the Obama-era Council of Economic Advisors. They said that raising the minimum wage would reduce crime rates. But the authors found in their study that an increase to the minimum wage drives up property crime rates among 16 to 24-year-olds, the group most likely to be working for minimum wage already. So a myriad of factors determine whether or not people choose to commit crimes. We know that, right? Including economic factors, access to jobs, steady income, education. They can all influence whether or not a person begins a career as a criminal. And this has a practical implication for policymakers who are looking to reduce crime, in addition to expensive interventions like increasing incarceration or, putting more police officers on the street. Enhancing labor market access and outcomes theoretically could be an effective approach. And so that's the point to this. And that's what the Obama administration Council of Economic Advisors was trying to point to. They were saying, give these people good paying jobs and you will see crime go down. But when they looked at it, the CEA conducted a back of the envelope analysis and concluded, let's raise the minimum wage to $12 by 2020. That will cut the crime rate by 3 to 5%, the equivalent of eliminating 250 to 510,000 crimes per year. But there's a problem with this approach. Although the minimum wage increases take-home wages for some workers, it also leads to reduced hours and job loss among other workers. Now, we've seen this, and this is not something that we're making up. This is the truth. And it's supported by government data and statistics. So what happens? Well, if your skill level puts the market value of your labor below the floor imposed by the minimum wage, it actually encourages employers to, instead of employing you, to put a robot where you would be. So not only are you not making $15 an hour, you're unemployed, which makes it much more likely that a person would have to resort to criminal activity if they can't find other gainful employment. But that's the thing. A person who is qualified to do a minimum wage job but not qualified to do a job for $15 an hour it doesn't mean when they leave that one job, they're suddenly qualified in another location. They're not qualified, which is why minimum wage jobs exist. It's an entry point into the job market. You work there and build your skills, and then you can move up. People who are purveyors of this $15 an hour minimum wage are eliminating an entire sector of the workforce opportunity. The opportunity to work for a minimum amount so that you can earn money and get, basically work under your belt. So you can basically say, look, I've worked here for a year. I showed up on time and I did a great job. And now I want to work for you and learn a different skill and make a little more money. But how can you do that if every job starts at $15 an hour and your skill set is still at 6 or 4 or 5 an hour? And employers know that. Let's not play. All right. Yay, we have a lot of callers. Let's go to the phones. Joe in Oklahoma, thank you for calling the show today.
Yeah, hi, Stacy. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, listen, I want to share with you and your listeners, you were talking a while ago about how the left keeps hammering Donald Trump, about how horrible he is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that. And I don't know, maybe some of your people already know this, maybe they don't, I don't know. But they're following the plan laid out by Saul Alinsky, and Alinsky was Hillary Clinton's mentor back years and years ago, and he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. You can Google it and find these things out. But my point is this. He said that ridicule is man's most potent weapon, and he's right. But the one I want to talk about, the one point that he makes, is that you have to continuously push your point. Push regardless. Do not let up. Do not relent. Even though you're pushing a negative, it will push through and become a positive. And that's why they continuously say the same old thing, horrible about Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And that's why we have to continually never get tired of pushing the truth. And it seems like we're just saying the same thing over and over again, but it has to happen because people are only hearing that he's a racist, that he hates people. And it's also, to your point, Joe, this illustrates your point perfectly. That's why the president uses ridicule and mockery against his enemies, because it diminishes their stature and makes them irrelevant. And that's why he continues to use it. Even when, we're up here complaining, and I've done it too, y'all, before I took on my new attitude towards President Trump's Twitter feed. At first, people would call in, I don't like what he's saying. And I'd say, yeah, that wasn't my favorite. Now, I not only do I not care, I understand it's something he has to use. The president has to use ridicule and mockery against his enemies because otherwise their words stick. It's literally a fight. It's a battle. And, that's the thing about warriors, isn't it? I've met people who've gone overseas and they've, been in combat specialties, and there's something different about them. And when you meet them, my habit is to thank them for what they did for our country and for being willing to go over and do what they did. And I don't ask them about the details. I'm not one of those people who's into, tell me a war story. I'm not into that. I just want to thank them for what they've done. If you don't have it in you to go over and literally clash swords or, bayonets, fixed bayonets with the enemy, if you don't have it in you to kill and destroy and break stuff like our combat warriors do, then you have to just respect that those people, that they have it in them and that they'll do it. And so it's similar to what we see with President Trump, because he's willing to go into the arena and joust, and he's willing to fight to the death. And we have to respect the fact that he's willing to do that. We can't sit on the sideline and say, I don't like how you're using your fixed bayonet while you're fighting. That doesn't look good. That doesn't look nice. You're not being polite. We can't do that because we're not in there doing the battle, are we? So unless you're willing to get in there and get your fixed bayonet and go in and do a little battle, then you have to sit back and be quiet. Sometimes it's just not for us to criticize. And so you're going to do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump. I just want you to understand why I'm no longer engaged in that exercise. He's got a plan. He's working on something. He's doing something specific. And, I don't have all the details. I don't get the classified briefings. I don't get any of the briefings. I just get whatever the White House press corps puts out. And that's not enough for me to understand the complexity of what's going on there. Monica in Texas, thank you so much for calling in today.
Yes, Stacy, I just had a question. Just to let you know first, I'm a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to follow morals and Christian values. And I know that you're black, correct? And
Yeah.
I don't understand the emphasis on when you talked about white policemen. I mean, I have nothing against anybody. I go to the diverse church and everything. But, ma'am, you cannot generalize and say this white man, that white man is nice, good, whatever. Black people are good, too. Mexican people are good. All people have good
Did I say they weren't good? I'm sorry. We need to make sure that we're understanding what I said. Did I say black people weren't good? Because I'm black.
No, but
and I said plenty of things about black law enforcement because my father is in law enforcement. He carries the gun and the badge every day. I have talked about all law enforcement in this country, over 1 million strong, that they're all doing a fantastic job. Over 1 billion interactions per year with Americans. And these people, they're black, they're white, they're Hispanic, they're Asian, they're men, they're women, and they are all in law enforcement. And I have said over and over and over again the respect that I have for them and how wonderful a job they've done. It just so happens that the 3 times I've dialed 911, the officers who responded were white. So those were anecdotal things that I was talking about in that segment. So I've never said Hispanics aren't good or that Asians aren't good. I've never said anything like that. I've never said anything similar to that. But what I was speaking about was this tendency to make everything about white people being so horrible. And I can say that and believe that black people are good too. Now, I'm sorry that I had to cut you off, but you're done here on this show because I can't let you call onto my program speaking to millions of people and make it seem as if I've ever said that any one group of people are bad. What I talk about are ideologies and culture. You know what's bad? It's the culture that teaches black people that they're victims and that if we're not saying good things about black people, we can't say good things about white people. I will say whatever I want. And if you misunderstand it, I will cut you off and correct you. Thank you for calling the show. Darius in North Carolina, thank you for calling in today.
Hello, Miss Stacy. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm a big fan of yours. I just want to say I'm proud I am.
Oh, no. We lost him. Darius, if you want to call back, please do. Bill in Alabama, thank you for calling the show today.
Hey, Stacy.
Hey, how you doing?
I've just got one question. When these ICE people ask these sanctuary city important law enforcement officers, aren't breaking the law if they don't give these illegal aliens to them?
Are they breaking the law if they what?
Sorry, what?
I don't think I understood the question. What are you saying?
I've got a bad connection. I'll have to try later.
No, I couldn't really understand what you were asking. You were asking about ICE and sanctuary cities.
Okay. Well, if you can hear me, I'm asking about when one of these ICE agents goes to a sanctuary city law enforcement agency and asks for these illegal aliens, aren't they breaking the law?
So the ICE agent is not breaking the law, but if a sanctuary city has said that they won't cooperate with law enforcement, then what they've done is they've created a law that contravenes federal immigration law. So the two laws are standing and they're both laws, but one contradicts the other. Now, I think that I learned somewhere in civics that federal law supersedes, but when there's a difference in the law, then what happens usually is an attorney general or somebody from one side or the other will sue, or someone who has standing, like a person who's been harmed by a lack of ICE detainer or something, they sue, and then it goes through the courts and goes to the circuit courts, and then it can end up at the Supreme Court. But it's not actually against the law for an ICE agent to show up at a prison where they know there's a illegal alien that they have a detainer order for, and to try to apprehend that individual. But what ICE has taken to doing is going to places where they know they can find these people where it's probable that they'll show up. So maybe they think this person will show up at this church. They have, some background information that this person attends this church or they work at this place, and they will try to catch them at a place where they know they're going to be, wherever they can find them basically, and then arrest them. But the law that the sanctuary cities have, basically it's just a law that negates a federal law. And it's resulting in people are being killed. I think we had this on the show the other day, and I was going to talk about it, and we didn't get to it. And we are just like 1 minute out here. It was yesterday or the day before. This woman, 46 years old, and a guy with a rap sheet as long as my arm went to her house. He followed her there, and he stabbed her to death. And it turns out he had a deportation order that he was under, but the jail let him free the last time they arrested him because it's a sanctuary city. So I hope that answers the question. And again, because I know somebody's bound to email me and say I was mean to Monica. No, I wasn't. I've just had it up to here with people telling me what I can and can't say. It's not going to fly. God bless from the heartland. Have a fantastic evening. Stacy on the right.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Aid workers are rushing to rescue victims and airdrop food, water, and blankets after a cyclone unleashed devastating floods in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi that left people clinging to trees and crammed onto rooftops. More than 238 were dead, hundreds more were missing, and thousands were at risk. Mozambique's president says the death toll from the cyclone could reach 1,000. President Trump hosted the Prime Minister of Brazil today at the White House. The president says he is open to granting privileges to Brazil.
I also intend to designate Brazil as a major non-NATO ally, or even possibly, if you start thinking about it, maybe a NATO ally. Have to talk to a lot of people, but maybe a NATO ally, which will greatly advance security and cooperation between our countries.
The two leaders also discussed the fallout in Venezuela. The U.S. Supreme Court rules immigration officials can detain immigrants years after their release from criminal custody. Fox News Radio's Jared Halpern has more from Capitol Hill.
A divided Supreme Court rules immigration authorities do not have strict time limits to detain people released from custody for deportable offenses. A group of mostly green card holders argued unless they're picked up shortly after release, they should be given a hearing to argue they are not likely to flee or present a danger to the public. But a 5-4 opinion delivered by Justice Samuel Alito says there's no statute text to support that argument. Lower courts had sided with one of the immigrants released from prison for marijuana possession in 2006, but not taken into immigration custody until 2013.
Get informed. Meet your state lawmakers. That is the focus of an event tomorrow in Boston hosted by Massachusetts Family Institute. Michael King is director of community alliances there, and he says events begin at 10 o'clock at Park Street Church.
We will gather in the historic sanctuary there, and we will train people on not just the counseling ban. We will train people on the late-term abortion bill called the Roe Access Act. We'll train them on the sex education mandate, which would give Planned Parenthood a monopoly on sex education curricula being taught in our state. We'll educate them on the 30 to 40 bills that want to increase commercial marijuana access, especially to our young people.
Lunch is provided. Afterwards, participants will walk 1 block to the State House.
And everyone will have an opportunity to go to their state legislator's office and speak face-to-face with their legislator regarding these important issues.
Well, the bill in Hawaii aims to ban most plastics at restaurants. Dozens of cities across the country have banned plastic foam containers, but Hawaii would become the first state to take such a step, which supporters say is intended to cut down on waste that pollutes the ocean. Still, restaurant owners say alternative products are not easily found. Those that are could lead to a cost increase for consumers. A record-setting contract deal for one Major League Baseball player breaks the mark for largest annual salary. Jared Max has details.
Mike Trout, 27-year-old center fielder for the Los Angeles Angels, will reportedly sign the richest individual contract in pro sports history. ESPN says it's a 12-year deal getting finalized, worth over $430 million. This would shatter the previous largest contract for boxer Canelo Alvarez by at least $65 million and would be at least $100 million more in total value than the deal that Bryce Harper recently signed with the Phillies. Trout, two-time American League MVP, has spent his entire career with the Angels, now entering his 9th season. Lifetime batting average, .307, 240 home runs.
The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim have not had a winning season since 2015. In final news this hour, Wednesday is Dairy Queen's 5th annual Free Cone Day. That's according to USA Today, which says Dairy Queen is giving away free small vanilla self-serve cones. The event, which runs all day while supplies last at participating Dairy Queen and DQ Grill and Chill stores, also serves as a fundraiser for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Find more news at OneNewsNow.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I don't like for people to go to prison when it's not absolutely necessary, but sometimes there ought to be an example. There needs to be a real clear accountability for things that have robbed other kids of the opportunity to go to college. And I think some of these people will get frog marched across the federal courthouse lawn.
This is part of the continuing Russia investigation. We're not going to just let all these fake news stories that were written about this investigation, about this hoax, that were lies. We're going to challenge every single one of them in court. We're just starting with Twitter.
This is the most ridiculous display by the Democrats. They are very well aware that the Mueller report is probably going to be released soon, and it is going to show that the president did nothing wrong. The campaign did nothing wrong, as we have all said from the very beginning. So here they have to throw something else out there to distract people, to try and make the president look bad.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yeah, and they're trying, and it's not really working. I have this is a funny story, actually, and we'll get to the phones here in just one second. Welcome back to the program here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We have this poll out that says Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is less popular than President Trump or Hillary. Celebrity freshman Congresswoman AOC, not as popular as her many social media admirers would like you to believe. Recent polling suggests that she's pretty widely despised, even in her home state and even within her party. So, never expect to hear any of that on CNN or MSNBC, but there it is. And you know how I feel about the polls. You got to take it with a grain of salt. But does that kind of ring true to you a little bit, that she wouldn't be as popular among the Democrats? Because she's sucking all the air out of the Democrat side. None of the other new freshmen who are in Congress who have a message and a mandate to go there and do something, they don't get any airtime. They're never asked onto any of the shows. It's just the three. 3 of them get all of the attention when there are, I think, 39 of them that are brand new. So, Anyway, let's go to the phones. We have Darius in North Carolina. Hey, Darius, thanks for calling in.
Hello, Miss Stacy. How you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Pretty good. Just want to say
Oh, no. He must have a bad connection there. And I'm not sure what his comment was, but so sorry about that. I think it's on his end instead of ours. So you might have seen this story out there earlier. And, oh, wait, let me just give you the rest of the details on this AOC poll. Let's see. The last time that AOC's favorable rating was polled back in September of 2018, prior to her election to Congress, It was done by Gallup. 50% of respondents had no opinion or had never heard of her. That number has shrunk to 29% over the past several months. So only 29% of Americans don't know who she is or have never heard of her. 31% of Americans view her favorably. 41% view her unfavorably. And the more people get to know her, the more those numbers tend to skew in a direction that's not good for her. That, to me, is kind of indicative of the things that she's been out there saying. And this poll was conducted by the Siena College Research Institute in March, and it also found that large majorities of New York residents favored Amazon's now scuttled plan to build a second headquarters in Queens, and thought that Amazon's decision to abandon the project is thanks in no small part to Ocasio-Cortez's aggressive opposition, and that was bad for New York. That's one way to tank your favorability rating. Destroy a bunch of $150,000 per year jobs, right? That's pretty interesting. I think it's an interesting kind of dichotomy for her because she's a leftist, she's a socialist. And the more that people get to know her, they realize she's outside of the mainstream. But they were sold a bill of goods. They were, look, she's attractive. Look, she's, she cuts a mean figure in these expensive suits. Look, she wants to, get you using her lasagna recipe and drinking beer with her on the live streams. And she's talking about stuff that sounds really good. But, sitting in Congress is not the same as doing a live stream on Facebook. Honestly, being an elected official, there's a lot of responsibility there. And I just don't see her as being up to the task. And so only time will tell if she's able to pull it off, actually able to create legislation, aside from these viral moments she keeps creating, where she asks the CEO of Wells Fargo about a pipeline that they didn't even help to fund. They didn't do the banking on that deal. She's asking him about it. Or trying to paint the banking industry as being responsible for oil spills or natural disasters when all they do is underwrite the loans. The responsibility for how the actual projects are executed and how they turn out lies with the people who borrowed the money. You can't be upset with the bank who loaned the money for a project, which on paper at the time before one shovel was pushed into the earth, the project was not only viable, but appeared on paper, as all of the other loans that they make appear on paper, to be sound investments. If they didn't go by acceptable practice and norms in the banking industry with which to approve and deny loans, then they would constantly be making loans on projects that never come to completion and were never paid off, and lots of defaults. We've seen where that leads us. So they can't use emotion or social policy from one political party or the other to be the sole basis by which they approve loans. And that's for any bank. It's not because it was the Wells Fargo CEO. It's them trying to make people who have nothing to do with the outcomes responsible. It's the same with that lawsuit for, I think it's the Sandy Hook parents are going to be able to sue Remington, the maker of the gun that Adam Lanza used. Why? Why would we sue the gun manufacturer? Do we sue the maker of spoons when we get back from the doctor and we've been told our BMI is too high and we need to lose some weight? Do we sue the spoon makers? No, we don't. We don't do that. So it's just crazy. So you might have seen the story. Devin Nunes is suing Twitter for $250 million. I was kind of surprised to see this, quite honestly. He's also suing Liz Mayer. She's a Twitter personality. She's also a consultant. She's a GOP consultant. But yeah, let's listen to him describe what he's up to. It's number one.
So this is the first of many, Sean, and what we're doing here is we're actually going after Twitter first because they are the main proliferator and they spread this fake news and the slanderous news. So if you look at the lawsuit, I think people can go and look at it on Fox News. It's all there. But the case we're basically making is this was an orchestrated effort. So people were targeting me. There were anonymous accounts that were developed. And look, there's not supposed to be, these accounts aren't supposed to exist. Twitter says that they don't have accounts that do this. So, like I said, this is the first of many lawsuits that are coming, but there were several fake news accounts, whether it was regard to the Russia investigation or to me, and we have to hold all of these people accountable, because if we don't, our First Amendment rights are at stake here. This isn't 20 years ago, Sean. What's happening is that Twitter becomes the gaslighting for all of the news. And when they're regulating us, they're regulating what people can see on my tweets, which they've done, and then they're proliferating out things that they agree with the algorithms that they develop. They need to come clean.
And so I agree with him that they're doing wrong by certain Twitter accounts, but it's not so much that they need to come clean as they just need to stop doing it. They need to set up a system by which any person can check and see what their distribution is on Twitter, and they should just clean the algorithms out and only have the algorithms that they have in there should only be geared towards catching, let's say, someone live streaming shooting up a mosque. So first of all, with all of the monitoring that Facebook does for conservatives, where they actually last week, they took one of my posts that I put up and they took the share button off of it. They made it so that it couldn't be shared because they didn't want people to know the content that I posted there. And it wasn't even like, wasn't from StacyOnTheRight.com. It was just a story. And I put it on Facebook and people were commenting, it says cannot be shared at this time. Now, instead of them running all of those algorithms and having people monitoring that stuff, all of that should be suspended. Let the conservatives post what they want. You let the liberals post what they want. And then focus all of your energies on making sure that a deranged murderer can't live stream their carnage on your platform. Same thing with Periscope and Twitter and all of these platforms have these live stream capabilities. I mean, can you imagine how much more quickly they would catch that type of activity if they weren't engaging in the type of activity they're engaging in? It's like being distracted at, anything that you're doing. If you're distracted, you're not only wasting energy on the distraction, but the energy that could be compounding that you would be spending on the primary activity, that's wasted as well. So it's more than one stream of energy waste that you're actually dealing with there. And it's the same thing for Twitter and these different social media platforms. But see, they don't want certain content going viral because then other people will hear it. And part of it is they don't want people, it goes viral and people get triggered. And they're like, I can't believe, like at Google when they were whining, I can't believe you said in order to have a family, you have to have children. Remember when, this may be a long time ago for some of you, but remember when, go in the Wayback Machine, when once upon a time, if you were speaking to a group of people and you said, and then at some point, you and your spouse might want to start a family. And start a family meant that you would begin to have children. And nobody went crazy when people said that. They would just say, oh, isn't it great news? Jim and Sue are going to have a family. They're going to start their family. They're having a baby. And everyone nearby would just say, oh, that's so nice. Or if they didn't think it was nice, they would just keep on looking in the other direction and ignore it or whatever, but no one got triggered. Now, if you say that people who are starting their family, in other words, people who are expecting a baby, they expect this or that from our service. That was the conversation that one of the Google executives was having, and everybody just lost their minds. The little liberals were like, you can't say start a family because you're insinuating by that anybody who doesn't have kids but is in a family, we're not a family. So me and my same-sex partner, we're not a family because we don't have kids. Well, I don't think he was saying that at all. He was using the traditional definition of starting a family, which just means having kids. It's just a euphemism for getting pregnant and having kids. But that's the kind of triggering that we have going on right now, where you can't even say that. You can't even disagree with someone, or, you can't characterize one group as this group is not all bad. Essentially, this group's not all bad. By saying this group's not all bad, that means you conversely are saying every other group is bad. That is not true. But you can't say that because people are so tuned in to hear every little criticism. And haven't we all been there before anybody thinks I'm trying to lecture or getting, high and mighty? Haven't we all been there? I'll speak about myself. I have been at a place where after realizing, I've not done this, I've not done that. And then, that then turns into a bit of sensitivity towards being criticized. And then if there's any criticism, it's like, wow, so I can't do anything right. I mean, who hasn't said that or heard someone else say that? No, the person criticizing doesn't mean you can't do anything right. They mean this one particular instance is something that they're wanting to do differently. If you're even-keeled and everything's calmed out, then that works. But if you're already riled up and looking for offense anywhere you can find it, you're going to find it. And that's what we see happening. We now have a whole generation of people who are primed and ready to be offended over any little thing, like somebody saying, oh, are you guys starting a family? We were already a family. Okay, I just was wondering, I thought you said you were pregnant. Never mind. That's where we are right now. That's where we are. Or the fact that they have engineers over at YouTube who sit around and anytime a word, a trigger word, a word that is on one of their blacklists is uttered by someone who's doing a live stream, then they immediately suppress the distribution there so not as many people can see it. Or they remove the share buttons if you're discussing a certain topic. Or, I mean, there's so much stuff that they can do because remember, they know the technology inside and out. They've programmed it. It's their thing. It's the same as like how you know your own kitchen or you know the contents of all your drawers. You know how to move things around to make them more conducive for you. You also know how to work things so they don't work for someone else. And it's the same thing here. You know what's funny to me is there were some people watching the live stream of the massacre. And I don't mean funny, I mean funny, ironic. And Facebook feels like those people were responsible for stopping it, not them. Because they were too busy watching shows like mine, trying to figure out what I'm talking about. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Marie Fischer from Project 21. Keep it here.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
Not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use a multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean Laundry Products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Last week I went to my doctor for a checkup and took my family out to dinner. My experience as a consumer was very different between the two. The restaurant had total transparency. The menu not only had prices of the items, but pictures of most of them. We knew exactly what we were getting and how much it would all cost. I even mentally calculated the tip before I received the bill. At the doctor's office, I had no idea what my procedures would cost. Even as the doctor was going over the tests that would run on my blood work, there was no mention of cost. I didn't know what I would have to pay until I went to the receptionist's desk and received the verdict. Fortunately for me, there was no sticker shock. The Trump administration wants to change some of this. At the moment, administrators are considering a rule that would require doctors and hospitals to disclose rates they negotiate with insurance companies. This would be a small step in the direction of healthcare transparency. Another problem with our healthcare system is the fact that someone else is paying for your medical procedures. If you go back to our family dinner, you can see the issue. If someone let us borrow their credit card and told us to have a nice dinner, we would probably spend most of our time looking at the left side of the menu. But when you pay for it, you also pay attention to the right side of the menu. 2 years ago, I wrote about the major differences in cost for heart bypass in the county in which I live. One medical center in the area was charging more than $80,000 more for the same procedure others were charging. Getting some transparency is an important first step, especially since more and more of us are paying for healthcare procedures because of high deductibles. We expect to see prices on a restaurant menu. I think we should be able to see prices at a doctor's office and the hospital. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Oh, welcome back to the program. Don't forget to head over to UrbanFamilyTalk.com and check out the content there. You can also find Facebook pages for all of the good things. AFR, AFA, Urban Family, Stacy on the Right. All those cool pages. And if you're on Facebook still, you can hit the like button. You can also go to americasvoice.tv. No, americasvoicenetwork.tv. Yeah. And you can see the TV side of things, which is the live stream if you're already into watching live streams. And we want to say thanks to our huge terrestrial audience that we have in 36 states, I think it is. And just so grateful for you and for your listening and for the partnership with our ministry here. Right now, it is my pleasure to welcome Marie Fischer. She's a member of Project 21's Black Leadership Network. And full disclosure, I am too. I'm one of the co-chairs for Project 21. And she's joining us right now to talk about the White House higher education changes that are being made for more accountability and transparency for American parents and the students that they're helping to fund through college and adults who are attending college as well. Marie, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, so it was really great to see you and meet you at CPAC. And, you know, after we met and I was flying home the next night after we'd had lunch together that day, I want to say way back that you and I met at like a networking thing. It was like almost like a happy hour type thing for moveonup.org. Did you ever go to any of those when you lived in Kirkwood?
If I did, probably back when I was in college.
See, I'm trying to
I was in
remember.
college in New York.
No, here. That would have been in St. Louis. He used to have them all over, but I just keep thinking that I'd met you before that my first time meeting you wasn't at CPAC.
Probably so, because I was there in St. Louis for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's very possible we did.
I just want to say we did, but I have no way of knowing now because you know how it is. It was so long ago. But it was great to get to spend some time with you and have lunch while we were at CPAC. And Marie was doing a round, she was making the rounds with interviews, talking about a number of subjects, which was fantastic. And here we are again. And we're talking about the blueprint, which is our 57-point list of recommendations by Project 21. These are legislative policy proposals that we've presented to the White House that we're really excited about the opportunity to see them adopt some of these things and come up with their own policies that we don't care about the credit. What we care about is that these things get done because we feel like it'll help not just the Black community, but America at large to see these changes made.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I was so impressed with the White House when they're actually trying to make colleges competitive, and they're asking for return on investment. We always say college and education is an investment into our future, but if we were going to invest in stock or any portfolio, we would want to see the return on investment before we even sink money into it. But up to now, we don't ask that of colleges.
We don't. In fact, what we do is we say based on reputation or legacy, we say, that's a good school, or we know someone, maybe our neighbor or a friend or someone, their kid goes there and they graduated and they did a good job. But what we really need to do is evaluate colleges and universities in an objective manner that gives us the ability to make a decision that's not based on emotions.
Exactly. I mean, every day, I remember one of the things that they're starting to do is if you look at graduation rates of a lot of colleges, some of them, even the ones that you think are really great schools, they're not up there. You'll see graduation rates from below 20, 30, and 40%. Like, would we want that on any investment? And why would we spend money? And some people are spending not only tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education, and you get nothing for it. Or it turns out the learning is not there where it needs to be.
So let's talk about that for a second. What we found in research that we've done is that there are longer lengths of time that it takes for people to graduate. For historical black colleges and universities, we found that the graduation, it takes longer for students to graduate from there, which means they graduate with higher amounts of student debt, but it doesn't correspond to higher income after graduation.
And, that's the biggest, I think, I don't know if it's a scam of it all, but sometimes you wonder, is this done on purpose in order to get more money out of the student or out of the family? And you don't want to do that. After a while, some people, if it takes too long to graduate, they're just going to stop altogether. So the money that they've spent is, I don't want to say wasted, but this money they spent, they will never get that return on investment. They don't get that degree. They don't get the, high-paying job that they want. And then people wonder why people are getting so frustrated with colleges nowadays.
So what has the Trump administration proposed to combat this? Because it's not just one or two families that are experiencing this. We're talking about millions of students who are kind of getting caught in this trap.
Well, one of the things he's proposing is he's trying to get colleges to shorten the time that you need a degree. Because many times, let's say first, I do work for a college. There's a lot of times you could go, say you go to one college, you spend 2 years getting all your core credits. Only if you transfer, all of a sudden, those core credits doesn't work. They'll say, no, you need to take the same class that you've taken. Might have a different name, might have a slightly little bit different title. So all of a sudden, you've got to take the same class again. You've got to pay more money. That extends the time for you to go to finish your degree. And one of the things he wants to do is to accelerate that. He's saying it shouldn't take, 5-6 years to get a degree, especially if you're going at the path that the college actually sets out, that they stay true to that path.
So one of my favorite chats that I've ever had with an activist is Kevin Jackson was talking about, he said, when your kids get ready to go to school, if they're not going for a STEM field, and sometimes even when they are, look at their list of classes that they have to have for their graduation. He said you'll probably see about a third of them are what he calls nonsense classes. So psychology, like you don't need a class in psychology to do, information technology or computer science or engineering. You don't need that, but they make you take it. He was talking about different classes, and they're called electives. And sure, they help with the liberal arts experience, and there's nothing wrong with the classes. But if you really wanted to just get your degree in the career field, are those classes really necessary, especially when you have to pay for them and the cost? You think about maybe a third of the classes. If a third of the classes are elective and you didn't really need them to be able to do the job that you're going to get the degree for, that means you could have saved all of that money off of your student loan balance.
And not only that, people don't realize everybody learns differently. And chances are, the majority of times, you'll have somebody who goes for a humanities degree is going to think completely different than someone who goes to a STEM degree. I majored in mathematics. For me, trying to do an English paper or humanities, that was just gut-wrenching. Because, back then at the time, I did not like to write. But if you give me math and science, anything that I would say very objective, I was very good at that. And usually when we have students going into STEM, that's what they're good at. Having them go through such classes as humanities or psychology or sociology, I understand it is for a rounding of a liberal arts degree, but is it really helping the student in the end? Or are you just doing more burdens and more obstacles towards that degree?
And then when you say that, what is going on with the Trump administration's proposal to eliminate some of that? Specifically, how do they address that issue? The classes that you don't need, et cetera.
Well, one of the things he does, and maybe it's not towards class you don't need, but he wants more Pell Grants to also go towards like technical schools, because there's some students you still can get a STEM education going to a 2-year college where you might not have all the electives you need, all the electives that a 4-year liberal arts college will require. But I work for a community college. They do have programs and certifications and such thing as game design, computer game design, or AutoCAD, or computer-based design. You can actually get a certification and get a job. You don't need to add the additional elective. And he's trying to push for them to offer Pell Grants for those. So a Pell Grant, a shorter time, that equals a lot less debt for students. And a lot sooner they're out into the workplace actually making a good salary and a good career. And
this would be specifically for these technical fields where you're talking about 18 months to 24 months and you're done with the program, you have a certificate or an associate's degree, but you're ready to work at that point.
Exactly. And for some students, that's all they really need. And I've seen people who, they just have, for example, where I work, they have a cybersecurity degree, a cybersecurity certification. They can take that and immediately go into a salary of $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. And that's without the 2-year degree, that's without without the 4-year degree, without all the student debt. And they're doing much better than, say, the 4-year college student who went for a philosophy degree.
Oh, definitely. And the other thing that sticks out to me about that is if they allow the Pell Grant for the shorter degree, the shorter length of time, that means that students who maybe they kind of suffered a little bit. And we all know someone who either they have a kid like this or they themselves were like this, where you kind of suffered through high school. It was just rough. You just weren't into the schoolwork and the environment wasn't one that you enjoyed. And the thought of doing that for 4 more years, it just feels like you're going to toss yourself down a hole. But if you could say, I can take this degree program and be done in 18 months, that's something they can see the end of, and they're much more likely to do that and then come out and make a real living, something that they can support themselves and not have to. I mean, I actually don't think it's a bad thing that some students go back home after college. I think in our culture, we place too much value on people leaving home, going to college, and then immediately getting their own apartment or something like that. Some of these people aren't mature enough to do that. And some of them do need to go back home. And I think culturally, we should be more accepting of these young adults staying at home, not as a permanent situation, but as kind of a launching pad, kind of boomeranging back home and then launching from there. Other cultures do that. I'm specifically thinking of people who come here from India and Pakistan. Their families, they intentionally have their kids come back home when they're done with college. And then they actually decide from there whether they want to go on and get a PhD or a doctorate in something, or if they want to join the workforce. And a lot of times when they come home, they bring their fiance, they get married over that summer after graduation, and then they live at home with their parents and they save up enough money to get a down payment on a house. And so they don't rent and they don't have these, move into a condo. They just go straight into their first home as a couple. And I know that's not what we do as Americans, but these families are coming here and they're doing that, and they're very successful. Their kids are doing really well as young adults, and they have a higher level of wealth attainment because they don't have that time where they're renting.
Right, and it's also, when you look at it, it's also keeping the family together longer. So it's a total combination. If you look, they keep their family together, they all work together. It's a unit longer, and then they're all more successful. I mean, I know here in America we push for independence, but sometimes being at home helps boost that independence in the long run instead of just pushing people out. But like you were saying, I mean, I have a child who has Asperger's. For him, math and science, he loves it. That's where he accelerates. He'll make A's all the time. Give him history and give him English, he'll make C's and D's. So for him, a 2-year program doing, like I say, game design or cybersecurity, he will excel at it. He'll have a job, and he won't have any debt. In fact, I have a friend now. He went to here in Frederick County, we have a program called CTC, Career Technology School. And what he did the networking program, and he went immediately into a job. He didn't even go to college. He immediately went to the networking job. This kid is now he's like early 20s. He's already making 6 figures.
Wow. So these are the kind of success stories that we've heard from other guests on the program, Marie. And if you're just tuning in, we're chatting with Marie Fischer from Project 21 about the president's new, this is another area where he doesn't get any credit. And that is for him. He's always had a problem with the way colleges, not all of them, but some colleges set up their programs where it makes money for the college and the student is there for, years and years, but it's in the end, it's not a good return on investment. And I know some people are getting tired of this, kind of business focus of President Trump, But I'm enjoying it a great deal, Marie, because it brings some sanity to situations that we know need some work. And I think there's a lot of parents out there, regardless of their political affiliation, who would agree that we need some reforms in this area.
We do. We definitely do. And I mean, another reform he wants to do is dealing with the accreditation. And he wants the accreditation to be based off of student performance or student outcomes. Right now, accreditation is just done if the college meets certain criteria, and it could be anything, you know, from employees to how they teach something. But he wants accreditation to be based on student outcomes. So if you have all these students who are doing well, if you have like 70, 80, 90% graduation rate, there'll be a better chance you'll be accredited than a college that has a 20 or 30% graduation rate. And there are a lot of colleges out there. You actually can look on the, you know, federal government's website, the education website. You can see the graduation rate of colleges. In fact, they even tell you that when you're doing your financial aid. They will show you that. I don't think people pay attention, but I know I would not want my child going to a college that had a 20, 30, or even 40% graduation rate.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, well, so we did that comparison with our daughter. It was actually my husband went to Forbes.com and pulled up they have a list of all the colleges, and they have a bunch of information on each one, but they have this really cool interactive thing that you can do, which is click on two colleges, and then it'll set them side by side so you can compare them line for line, like student body population, graduation rate, etc. And it was very helpful for us in her making her final choice. You have been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Marie Fischer of Project 21's Black Leadership Network. Talk to you again soon.
Well, thank you for having me. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Talk again soon. We will be back with more right after these messages. More Stacy on the Right up next.
Have you ever met someone who seems to be exactly where they should be and in control of life in a way you only can imagine? Many of us spend our whole lives looking for that place, and it's only the one who made us who can tell us where we were created to be. And he has. There are 6 words in the Bible that answer our "why am I here" question. It's speaking of Jesus Christ when the Bible says all things were created by him and for him. You were created by Jesus and for Jesus, and you're going to have a big hole in your heart until you have Jesus. The sins of a lifetime have left us far away from the one we were made for, and that's why Jesus came and died for our sins, to remove the wall between us and our Creator. If you want to know what that feels like and have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, call us at 888-MEET-HIM or visit us online at chataboutjesus.com.
The Christian life is a battle. A wise soldier puts on the whole armor of God so that he is able to stand against the wicked schemes of the devil.
We can have victory over the enemy when we go into the battle, not dependent on our strength, but dependent on the strength of Almighty God.
The Hour of Intercession with Joseph Parker, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Media Minute with Howard Kurtz.
After the horrifying massacre at 2 mosques in New Zealand that killed 50 people, some pundits went on the air and tried to link this in some fashion to President Trump. MSNBC's Joy Reid, Donald Trump's derogatory comments about Muslims, and his refusal to condemn white supremacy have undermined America's moral authority when events like this in New Zealand take place. As CNN's Jim Acosta Tough questions about whether the president is emboldening right-wing extremism with his immigration rhetoric. NBC News analyst Ned Price. This is a president who has given plenty of rhetorical ammunition, I think, to terrorists like this. Now, it's fine to debate the president's comments on white nationalism and how he handled the New Zealand incident, but when you have these commentators tying, linking, questioning whether or not this tragedy on the other side of the world was somehow inspired by President Trump, I think it shows you something about the media's insistence on turning every single story into a Trump story. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Pride goeth before a fall, and this is a pretty big fall for some of these people, especially a person who is claiming to be so ethical. And this is one of the most unethical and disgusting things we've seen in the way of a crime wave in a long time, because it's people who are cheating a system. And it's not just that they're cheating for their kids. That's bad enough. But they're cheating kids who needed a break, who needed a chance, kids that worked hard and tried and made the grades on their own and through their hard work, but they didn't have parents who were shelling out bribe money, and so therefore they didn't get to go to Harvard or Yale or USC.
And this is where we really, Governor Huckabee, you just heard there, Governor Huckabee talking about the Hollywood college admissions scandal. And I think one of the things that really sticks out to me about the college admissions scandal is that these parents are trying to get around the things that are set up to make the college admissions process more equal. Now, you already have legacy admissions. And I always say, people yell a lot about affirmative action, which it's a thorny issue. But there's also the issue of legacy admissions, because yes, your parents' IQ definitely plays a role in your own IQ, but it doesn't mean that a naturally driven individual who graduated from Yale, that every one of their kids will be naturally as driven to be able to, withstand the rigor of going to Yale University. But the legacy admissions process means that if your parent went to Yale, you can get in too. Now, you might go in there and make straight A's or, really work hard and get a great education. But not every child who has the ability to accept in a legacy admission is automatically deserving of that just because their parents graduated from there. But that's not something that anyone's looking at doing away with. So this Hollywood scandal is really it epitomizes how some people say, yeah, you have to have these great test scores, and they didn't take the time to raise their kids to make those test scores, to make those grades. But they're saying, I still want my kid to get in there, and so I'm going to use my money and power and influence to get them in there. And what's really, really something is that these two women, like the one lady, and I get them mixed up. I think Lori Loeffner is the mom who plays on all the Hallmark movies. So she's the Aunt Becky on Fuller House. I think I'm getting that right. And then the other actress is the one who played Frasier's girlfriend on Frasier. She was the mean, hard-hitting bank chick, and she was that the two of them would actually go to jail. I remember talking to my husband about it over the weekend. And he was just, he was talking about it, and I was standing there with my face he said, what's going on with you? And I said, I just can't believe these two people might go to jail. And he said, anybody can go to jail. I said, but these two people, like out of all the people in Hollywood I thought might be involved in a scandal like this, these two people weren't even on my radar. And they thought that their money would insulate them not only from prosecution, but just would insulate them, period. Like all they had to do was pay. They'd never be found out, and that their kids would go to college. And the saddest thing about it is that the girls, I don't think really were that interested in going to college, not to get an education. They know they don't need it because they've got money. They know they don't need any of that. And so they don't have the ambition to go there and do a good job. But then there's also the issue of they took slots from people who really worked hard. Can you imagine your dream is to go to University of Southern California, which it's a private school, by the way. I thought University of Southern California, for some reason, I thought it was a public school, like a state school, but it's not. It's a private school. It is world renowned. It's a big, big time, hard to get into, really, really well thought of. I mean, obviously they have a lot of liberals on there and a lot of snowflakes, but anyway, it's a place where you say you went to the University of Southern California, people take notice of that. And so the girls took slots from other kids who probably did have great ACTs, SATs, great grades, volunteer service, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, that's the part that really, it shocks me, because you would think these two actresses, they've been so blessed. You know what I mean? They've been so blessed. They've had just amazing careers in Hollywood, wonderful opportunities. I won't comment on all of the things the roles that they've played in. One of them has played Goody Two-Shoes pretty exclusively. The other one, she's played the villain. She's played in some programming that is not as wholesome family-wise. But they've had a great run. And they have taken advantage of the American dream by, attaining wealth and doing whatever. But in the end, their wickedness is going to get the moms, not the dads. The moms might have to go to jail. I mean, I'm still really surprised that they went to all of this trouble over college, which is optional, especially if your parents are worth, 50 or 100 million bucks. You don't have to go to college. And I'm not saying that because I think college is important for kids who that's in their future. I also think trades are important and really respectable for kids who are going into the trades and they're going to be their own bosses. That's important too. All of it is something that can be beneficial. We shouldn't all just try to take one tack. But I'm still unable to really understand why they felt like they had to do this. It's not like they were in these hugely intellectual circles where everyone's kids were, acing the ACT or the SAT, and they were just worried that their daughters would be ostracized. Their kids were raised in Hollywood. So anyway, so I want to pivot over now. This is still in the educational realm, but this is an interesting development. It's local residents in Massachusetts, Newton, Massachusetts, and they're taxpayers, obviously. And they filed a lawsuit accusing the Newton School Committee, Superintendent of Schools David Fleischman, Newton High School principals, and multiple high school history teachers of indoctrinating students with curriculum that is laced with anti-Semitism and bigotry against Israel. So over the course of the last several months, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, focused on promoting peaceful coexistence with an ethnically diverse America. They've been investigating anti-Semitic rhetoric in the curriculum of Newton schools, and they're now using the information they found as a foundation for a taxpayer lawsuit. The quote from APT, Americans for Peace and Tolerance, here's their quote. "We have identified precisely what is being taught and who is responsible. Now our investigation has become the basis for a taxpayer lawsuit based on the education and civil rights laws of Massachusetts." And they sent this statement in an email. "We accomplished this through perseverance in the face of intimidation from the teachers union, successful appeals against the school's obstruction of the investigation with the Massachusetts Secretary of State, and more importantly, with your generous support." It's a 469-page legal complaint that they filed last week detailing the lengthy history of Newton residents' efforts to have NPS address and correct the factually flawed teaching. So just in case we're wondering if they just first went straight to the law, they actually tried to address this on their own. They tried and tried and tried. The parents tried to have the Newton School District address their concerns, and they wouldn't, and so now they're suing. Now, one of the things that these textbooks are teaching is that Jews and Christians deliberately forged their holy texts to contradict the Muslim Quran. Another textbook instructed that Zionism has little connection to Jewish history in Palestine. Students were taught that Jews took advantage of the Holocaust to gain sympathy for Zionism at the expense of Arab plight, and that Israelis were compared to Nazis amid claims that they've treated Palestinians like Nazis historically treated the Jews. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. So, in looking for the sources of the anti-Semitic and anti-Israel bigotry in the curriculum, they discovered a few bad apple teachers who view their teaching positions as giving them license to promote their personal political agendas. We're also looking closely at a common pattern with these politicized teachers. Most, if not all, have taken professional development courses developed with foreign funding by the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Newton history teachers and school administrators must think either that anti-discrimination laws do not apply to them or that these laws do not protect their Jewish and Israeli students, and that's according to APT President Charles Jacobs. There is no academic freedom to brainwash students with fake history and pro-Arab or anti-Semitic propaganda. That is, these days, alarmingly too common on the left in America. That's a continuation of the statement by Jacobs. Karen Hurwitz, who is representing the taxpayers in the lawsuit, said her clients are not seeking monetary damages despite the pain they feel as a result of students being taught materials that slander Israel and the Jews. She says this is the type of the material that leads to anti-Semitism. And she's right. And so that is what you have to do. They have this not-for-profit. It's funded by individual donations, and they're using that as a means with which to remove this repugnant material from their public school. And it's crazy that they have to go that far. They just keep reaching out and trying to work with the school district and getting pushed back. And so they said, you know what, we're going to do our own investigation and we're going to sue. And you know they have some really good research that they've done and completed when they have a 496-page complaint. So be it. I applaud it. It is so important for people to take the next step. If you can't get it done by communicating with the school district, and some of us have just, if you feel like there's something going on in your school district, that people just leave. I don't think these people, they weren't willing to leave. They wanted to stay, and so that's what they're doing. So now I want to talk to you guys about listener stories. You got to call in for these. We're gathering stories now to play during our April Share-a-thon, and I'll be broadcasting this show from home base in Tupelo. Now, y'all know I like Tupelo. It's the cutest little town. And by little town, I mean it's a good-sized town. Like, it's a good-sized town. It's nice. But I like it. I like going there periodically. And I like hanging out with all of my peeps at AFR and Urban because I get to see everybody, talk, we get to hang out a little bit. And then we also get to do the show from there. So I'm really excited about that. So the question we have for you is, has American Family Radio made a difference in your life? Have you ever been there, like in a place and some programming here helped you? That's what we want to hear from you. If we've ever given you the right thought at the right time, or the right message at the right time, or maybe a piece of news or information that was really applicable to something that you're working on or in your life, we'd love to hear about that. We want to hear your AFR story. It could be a blessing and encouragement to others, and it'll bless us. All the people you hear on the radio here, we'd love to hear these stories because it really blesses us. So call and share for a minute or two, and you might hear yourself during Share-a-thon, which is so cool. The listener story line is 877-876-8893, 877-876-8893. And when you do that, leave a minute or two, so keep it pithy, but definitely share. And you might hear yourself on the air during Share-a-thon in April. And it's going to be so fun. Share-a-thon this year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm bringing one of the kids down with me. So we're going to have a good time. So it's going to be pretty fantastic. So I wanted to see, I'm just checking. Okay. Yeah. Victor Davis Hanson. So you might know him. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. And for me, this is one of my kind of bucket list interviews that's going to happen tomorrow. I respect him greatly. His writing, his work, I've played audio clips of him in other interviews before on the show. It's going to be no different tomorrow. I'm going to be all ready to go to ask him about his new book. The new book that he's just written, it's called The Case for Trump. Actually, what's interesting about that is that we're reading The Case for Trump this month because it's our book club book for next month. So, yeah, it's going to be really fantastic to speak with him. And I encourage you to be here for that interview. Listener storyline, 877-876-8893. And we will be back with him tomorrow. We'll be covering a few, hot news stories as always. And I encourage you to go over to stacyontheright.com and hit the subscribe button. We would love that. And yeah, God bless you from the heartland. Citizens, enjoy your evening. Be back with you tomorrow.